It's time for a bit of French passion in World of Tanks console. Yes, we are looking at the AMX 5100, the tier 8 medium tank from the French line, of course. And this is a tank that I thought I would probably not like, but I was actually subtly amazed, and that's because this thing is a little bit of a beast because you have the mobility, and mobility in World of Tanks usually means that you are more flexible, and so you can, although may not have some of the key attributes that you'd want, because of the flexibility you can make it work. And that's what I found with the 5100 and how we managed to have the result that we had in this game. So at the beginning of the game, what do you have? Well, you've got the YOLOing A43. I don't know why he went through the middle of the map, but he gets hopefully taken out quick, fast, and in a hurry. And we can potentially get the last shell on him, and yes, we do. So he's gone, and we've also picked up a decent amount of damage for the beginning of the game. But the key thing I want to showcase about the AMX 5100 is the power of the autoloader, and that is because it has 320 alpha, but it has 6 shells in the magazine, which allow you to do things like you've just seen there, where we can shoot one target and then unload on one. He actually got taken out, and then we can swap to another and continue our assault. And that means you can share out the damage between the enemy team whilst focusing on one tank at the same time. So you can get rid of one tank, then focus on another tank, and that way you're kind of dealing with 2 birds at with one stone. So that's kind of what we're after with the 5100. But remember, this tank doesn't get armor. It is not a armored beast. That doesn't really come until the tier 10 in the form of the AMX 50B. But this tank does have a few extra things, and that is that you do have the kind of power of being able to get into position and surprise opponents, which is surprising in itself because it's a pretty large tank. This is not a small tank in any regard, and that means that a lot of the vehicles that maybe you'd be coming up against do not expect you to just brawl up against them and find them randomly and kind of YOLO into them. So I always enjoy a tank that kind of surprises people, that maybe people think is an underdog, and then you end up just absolutely stomping, and that's kind of my favourite tanks in the game. Some of my favourite tanks in the game are probably one of the worst ones, and I'm not surprised because I just find it fun when you're kind of playing in a terrible tank and you're doing superbly. But obviously, you guys all have different opinions, and maybe you've tried out the AMX 5100. I'd be very interested to see how you guys have fared with this vehicle, because I can see some people absolutely despising this and finding it a pain. But you can see here, we're kind of going around against this light tank. We try and hit him, but unfortunately we're not reloaded yet. We hit him with one, and then we go in and we can just basically chase him around. You probably wouldn't be able to chase around very many other kind of tanks with this if you were playing in something like the Emil 2 or something. You just don't have the turning speed, and that's something that the MX 5100 does. You can actually go around, although when you're driving into rocks it doesn't usually work out all too well. But in this game we have picked up 1500 assistance damage because the tank has a pretty good view range for a kind of medium tank at tier 8. Now, it is a medium tank, although probably in name only. It used to be... It's kind of weird. It's not really a medium, but it's not really a heavy tank, and it's nowhere near a tank destroyer or anything like that. So it's just a weird one. I don't even know what to call it. It is a tank that doesn't have armor, but it also has the kind of power that you'd expect from maybe a tank destroyer in the game. But nonetheless, this replay showcases the kind of speed at which you can complete games and come out with victories, because that was, what, a 4.5 minute replay where we managed to pick up 4,000 damage, and only an autoloader would have been able to do that in that game. We pick up 6 enemies destroyed, 1839 base experience, and of course a ton of XP because this was played with ×5 XP boosts in addition to just the actual tank itself. And of course we dealt 5,600 combined damage, and we also picked up a mastery badge, high caliber, bruiser, top gun, fire for effect, and we did come top in the game by a considerable margin, over 1,400 damage more than anyone else in the game, plus we also got a lot more assistance as well. So a really good game. Let's jump into another one. The final replay we have is on a map that we never focus on this channel, and it is VIII, and that's usually because it's kind of an interesting map. Either you have a terrible game usually, or you have a really good one, and it primarily comes along in the form of your team, because if you have a terrible team on VIII, the enemy can just control the entirety of the map, and there's so many room or there's so much room for crossfire opportunities that you can just get taken out super quickly. So you've got to play it almost perfectly if you want to come away with the victory, and also with a really good damage result as well. So what we do usually on VIII, now I'm not saying that I don't have good games on VIII, but the key thing is kind of taking a position where you can analyse what you can do in the game and decide upon what you think is going to be best for your team. And so I always usually pick the middle position, unless I'm playing in something like a heavy, where I would typically go towards the castle and be a little bit more aggressive in that regard. But what you can see us doing here is just detecting some of the opponents, and one thing that you should always realise is that, especially when playing an autoloader, you want to make sure that you are in a position at the beginning of the game where you can farm up people that maybe cross, and you can see me doing exactly that in this replay against the Dragon, and of course all of the people that have decided to push a little bit too aggressively on the enemy team, and you can see us just ploughing rounds into the side of them, and already we've picked up 1,200 damage, and it's exactly what the AMX 5100 was designed to do. A tank that outputs a ton of damage, but it can also shift around to then make sure that it's consistently doing that damage throughout the entire game. So what can VIII really offer the AMX 5100? Well, because this tank is pretty fast, you can make some kind of pretty decent plays. You can change the direction at which you're going to attack from, unlike some tanks that you see in the game that are a little bit slower and can be a bit of a pain in that regard. So that's what this tank can offer in this map, and of course this map is very good for catching people off guard and just completely taking them out from full health, because essentially with the alpha damage of this vehicle you can take out pretty much every tier 8 in the game from full health if you penetrate every single shell, and if you're firing premium ammunition you're probably more likely to do that, because you know how it is with the premium spam. But regardless of premium, you can make sure that you are kind of aiming properly with this vehicle. I would highly recommend putting any of the accuracy perks you possibly can, because ultimately when you're firing off so many rounds in such a short period of time, one shell can mean a whole lot of a difference between you having a really good game and maybe you get taken out, because that one shell could have been super vital and it could have been the last one you have in your tank. So you've got to make sure that you do kind of evaluate that when you're firing. So this game we did get spotted, which is a little bit terrifying because we're sat out in the open. We're going to do a little retreat. We've got an LT-432 pushing up from behind us who we need to get rid of, because when they're light tanks they can pen you every single time when you're playing up against them, because they can get around the side armour of this vehicle. So it's really imperative that he gets out of the game, and then we can sort out what we want to do. He obviously gets taken out by a teammate, which is nice. And so now it's just a case of spotting the vehicles that are going to be pushing along from this direction. That's exactly what our teammate here is managing to do. So the T26E4, the Super Pershing, is a tank that I wasn't sure if I could pen the lower plate. Sometimes if you've got super high pen you would have been able to. We kind of decide to go against it, and we're going to go for the turret weak point of the Super Pershing right here. And then we're going to take out this T-43 because it's an easier target. We can guarantee it. We can always take out the Super Pershing later on by getting round the side of him because it's not the fastest tank in the game. And obviously we can try and go for that turret as well with the whatever rounds were left after the T-43, which is what we try and do. Brings us up to 3,000 total damage within this replay, which is good. And we've also now got a Barras that's pushing forward. So in my head at this point, I'm thinking, right, I need to put myself at a bit of a distance. I also need to put myself in a position where if the enemy team decide to YOLO me, my team are going to be able to support me. Because if I sit in a position where if they YOLO me, it's only me that can deal damage to them, you know, you're probably going to end up getting taken out a lot quicker. And potentially if you're sat in a place where your teammates can help you out, maybe the enemy tanks get taken out, maybe you come away with the victory. And of course that will be beneficial for you, and it will keep you alive and it will increase your chances of winning. So where you can do that, I highly recommend it. So what are we doing here? Well, we're going after the T-78. Unfortunately, he gets taken out pretty much straight away. We've got a tank from behind. We're not entirely sure what that vehicle is, but another round comes in, an APCR round by the looks of it. The Barras then decides he's going to come in, and I'm thinking, oh god, I've absolutely shafted this one. We put a nice one into the Barras, and we're now down to a one shot for both of them. We then go for a shot into the Barras, and we somehow miss, which is an absolutely terrible scenario. And now the Barras does get finally taken out, which is good because we could have been taken out quite easily there, which is always good. It's one of those things where you got a bit of squeaky bum time at the end of the game, but we've still picked up 4,100 damage. We know that the enemy tank is over here. The medium tank on our team is deciding to go towards the cap, probably after the artillery. But obviously I don't want to push out against this UDES. We don't know if he's going to be coming close to us. He could be YOLOing towards us. But of course, as with all of the Swedish TDs, they're still sat in the same position up on that hill. So we can use the mobility and hopefully we can get towards this UDES before the game ends. 4,100 damage is not a bad result at all in a tier 8 tank. It's not the highest result you'll probably ever see. And of course this vehicle can do a hell of a lot more because you can effectively do 5,400 damage in just 3 clips worth if you can manage to pen every single shot, which is the kind of problem with the AMX 5100 because the intraclip reload is not particularly amazing, which means the delay between your first shell and your second and your third and blah blah blah, you've got about 3 seconds I believe between each shot. Which gives the enemy to actually move, to repair their tracks, to do whatever, and then kind of evade your next shells. So it's kind of the negative of the French autoloaders. Although, you know, with the 50B, you get a significantly reduced amount of delay between your shells, which is nice. But I don't think it's quite as good as the T-57 Heavy, and that's because you get better armour generally. So yeah, there's always that. So what do you want to do? Do you want to go towards the French heavy tank, or at least the French AMX 50B medium heavy hybrid thing that Wargaming are not sure exactly what it is? Let me know in the comment section down below what you would do. Are you interested in more of the AMX 50B line? Let me know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to check out some of the other gameplay and tank reviews that we have on this channel. And of course, hopefully you're subscribed already, but if you aren't, please do subscribe because it helps out this channel massively. And yeah, just thank you for all of the support that I've had recently, and I hope that you join me in the next video. Goodbye.